Chantal was only a 13-year-old girl, abandoned by her mother and rejected by everyone. She was starving on the streets, sleeping in alleys, chased away like trash. One day, she crossed paths with a furious horse that had already sent 3 men to hospital and was to be put down the next day. But that night, the invisible child did something unimaginable. She tamed the horse. You won't believe how she did it. The burning sun of Guadalajara was melting the asphalt when Chantal ran away from the bakery, tears in her eyes. The baker had shouted insults at her, calling her salgamine and good for nothing, simply because she had asked for a piece of stale bread. At 11, her bare feet already knew every stone of the streets, every corner where she hid from eyes full of scorn. Chantal was a young black girl, with curly hair and big shining eyes, even in sadness. For 5 years, she had lived alone after her mother, Yolanda, had abandoned her without a word. Since then, she survived by begging, sleeping in dark alleys, and fleeing from those who chased her like a pest. "Why does everyone hate me?" she whispered as she walked through the dusty streets. "I didn't do anything wrong." Her stomach screamed with hunger. It had been 2 days since she had eaten anything but a few crumbs found in the garbage of a restaurant. Her thin body trembled, but she kept walking, searching for a safe place of night. When the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Chantal reached the outskirts of the city. There lay the Aguilar Ranch, a vast property with several houses, stables, and enclosures full of horses. She had passed by there before, always careful not to be noticed by the workers. "Get out of here, black girl," a fat-bellied man had once shouted at her. "You have no business here. Go loiter somewhere else." But that evening, Chantal was far too exhausted to go any further. She hid under dry branches near one of the enclosures, a little apart from the others. The place looked abandoned, surrounded by aged wooden planks and a rusty gate. It was then she heard irritated voices approaching. Chantal curled up even tighter, trying not to make a sound. "That damned horse has already sent 3 men to the hospital this month. Grumpy Ramon, the foreman Bougon, and Corpulent. Today again, he almost broke Oswaldo's leg when we tried to put the saddle on him. We've tried everything. Whip, rope, gently. Nothing works," answered another worker, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "That beast is the devil himself." "The boss Fernando is right," sighed Ramon. "Twister can't stay here. He's far too dangerous." Through the branches, Chantal caught sight of a huge horse, black as a night, pacing in circles inside the enclosure. It was the most beautiful animal she had ever seen, yet in its eyes shone a savage rage. It snorted loudly, pounded the ground with its hooves, and bit at anything that came near the fence. "This horse is cursed. I swear it," murmured Ramon, making the sign of the cross. "Since he came here, it's been nothing but trouble. There's only one solution. Put him down." "You're right," agreed Fernando, a tall man with graying mustache and piercing eyes. "Tomorrow morning I'll prepare the papers. Twister must die before he truly kills someone." The men walked away, leaving the enclosure in a heavy silence. Chantal watched the horse through the old wooden fence. Twister had stopped his frenzy. He now walked slowly in circles, like a prisoner in a cell. A pang tightened Chantal's heart. It was as if she were looking into a mirror. Like her, this animal was rejected, feared, considered a burden to be eliminated. "You too. No one wants you," she whispered, her eyes brimming with tears. "Everyone is afraid of you, just like they're afraid of me." When night fell and all the ranch lights went out, Chantal slipped out of her hiding place. Her thin legs trembled with fear and hunger, but a strange force drew her toward the enclosure. She walked slowly to the old wooden gate, careful not to make a sound. Twister stopped and fixed his shining eyes on her. For a long moment, the abandoned little girl and the wild horse stared at one another in silence, each recognizing in the other the same pain, the same loneliness. "Hi," Chantal whispered in a weak voice. "I know how you feel. I don't have anyone either." She carefully opened the gate, the wood creaking beneath her fingers. Twister stepped back a few paces, but didn't attack, unlike his usual behavior. Chantal entered the enclosure and sat down directly on the dusty ground, leaning against the fence. "They want to kill you tomorrow," she said softly, looking at the horse. "Me too," she whispered. "People think it would be better if I disappeared as well." To her great surprise, Twister took a few cautious steps toward her. His muscles remained tense, ready to flee, but something in the girl's calm presence reassured him. "I won't hurt you," Chantal murmured, extending a small, dirty hand. "I promise." The horse sensed something. She was different from all those who had tried to break him. There was no violence in her movements, no fear or anger in her voice, only a deep sadness he knew all too well. Slowly, Twister lay down a few meters away from her, still watching her out of the corner of his eye. Chantal smiled for the first time in weeks. It was the first time in a very long while that someone hadn't pushed her away. "Thank you," she whispered, her eyelids heavy. "Thank you for not driving me off." The first rays of sun woke Chantal, asleep inside the enclosure. She had spent the night leaning against the old wooden fence. Twister lay on the other side, like two old friends sharing a moment of rest. When she opened her eyes, she saw several workers frozen behind the planks, staring at her with a mix of fear and astonishment. "Good Lord!" cried Ramon, the foreman, pointing inside the enclosure. "How is that kid still alive? The horse should have trampled her." "That's impossible," murmured Oswaldo, his arm still in a sling from Twister's last attack. "Just yesterday, he nearly killed me for simply trying to give him hay." Fernando, the owner of the ranch, rushed over at the noise. Seeing the scene, he froze and raised his hand to impose silence. "Calm down, everyone. Look closely. The horse is completely calm." It was true. Twister stood near Chantal, breathing slowly without the slightest trace of aggression. When the girl stood up and brushed the dust from her torn dress, he followed her with his eyes, like a loyal dog watching its master. "This is the devil's work," muttered one of the workers, making the sign of the cross. "That girl must know witchcraft. Or maybe," Fernando said thoughtfully, "she has something we don't." He slowly pushed open the rusty gate, its hinges groaning under the pressure. "Girl, step out carefully," he said in a calm tone. "Don't make any sudden movements." Chantal turned her head toward Twister and placed her dirty hand on his warm muzzle. The horse didn't move, simply closing his eyes as if he enjoyed the touch. "See you soon, my friend," she whispered. "I'll come back if I can." When she left the enclosure, all the men stood speechless. Never had they seen anything like it. The most dangerous horse on the ranch had spent the night with a street child and hadn't harmed her. "It's the devil, boss, I'm telling you," grumbled Ramon, shaking his head. "That kid put a spell on the animal." "The only thing she did was not fear him," Fernando replied, his eyes fixed on Chantal as she slowly walked away. And maybe that's all Twister ever needed. Before she reached the main gate of the ranch, Fernando called out to her. "And you, what's your name?" "Chantal," she answered, turning back warily. She was used to people only calling her to yell at her. "Listen, Chantal," said Fernando as he approached. "I have a proposal for you. How about we make a deal? You can come every day to spend time with the horse. In exchange, I'll give you real food." Chantal's eyes filled with tears of joy. To eat every day. She could hardly believe her ears. "But there is one condition," Fernando added, pointing to Ramon. "Ramon will watch you at all times. At the slightest problem, you will never set foot here again. Understood?" "Understood, sir," she replied, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you so much." From that day on, Chantal returned to the ranch every afternoon. Ramon always stayed nearby, sitting on a wooden stool, grumbling and throwing sharp remarks to anyone who would listen. "Look at this circus," he would say to the other workers. "A little black street girl taming a horse that none of us could even approach. It's a disgrace." "It's black magic, I'm telling you," added Oswaldo, still nervous. "These street kids, they learn strange things, nobody knows where from." But Chantal paid no attention to their hurtful words. Inside that enclosure, she had found her very first true friend. Every day, she spoke to Twister about everything. About the freezing nights in the alleys, the hunger that sometimes drove her to steal a piece of bread, the constant ache of not having a single person in the world who cared for her. "You know what I want more than anything?" she said one afternoon, sitting in the dirt beside him. "A real family. People who would love me as I am, without wanting to change me or throw me away." Twister gently laid his muzzle on her frail shoulder, as if to tell her he understood. He, too, had been rejected, seen as a danger, something to be eliminated. Days passed, and their bond grew stronger than ever. Twister let her stroke his ears, brush his shining black mane, and even check his hooves with complete trust. It was as if he knew she would never harm him. One day, as she carefully brushed his mane with an old brush Fernando had given her, she overheard the workers talking on the other side of the fence. "It's a disgrace for us men," one of them spat on the ground. "We've spent months trying to tame this horse. Couldn't even get a rope on him. And that 11-year-old girl turns him into a lamb. There's something not right about it," added another, casting a suspicious glance at Chantal. "Kids like that, they're always mixed up in shady things. She must have done something to the horse." "What matters is that it works," interrupted Fernando, arriving without them noticing. "Twister has never been so calm, and the girl is doing better too. She eats, she sleeps safely." Chantal pretended not to listen, but her heart pounded. For the first time in her life, an adult was standing up for her, speaking well of her in front of others. 3 weeks later, just as Chantal was finally beginning to feel safe and happy, everything changed brutally. She was in the enclosure, teaching Twister to come to her with a simple whistle, when a voice froze her blood. "Chantal." The girl turned slowly and saw a thin woman standing at the fence of the enclosure. Her clothes were loud and too tight, and she smiled a forced smile with no warmth in her eyes. It was Yolanda, her biological mother, the one who had abandoned her 5 years earlier, without a single explanation. "What joy to find you again, my darling," Yolanda said in a sweet voice, too sweet to be sincere. "I've searched so long for you. I heard on the radio that my little girl managed to tame a wild horse. Everyone in town is talking about it." Chantal felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Twister understood instantly that something was wrong. He stepped closer and gently rested his muzzle on the girl's shoulder as if to shield her. "You are not my mother," whispered Chantal, her voice trembling. "My mother abandoned me when I was little, and she never came back." "What nonsense!" Yolanda exclaimed, clapping her hands and laughing, as if it were all a misunderstanding. "I never abandoned you, my girl. I had to leave for work in another city, and I couldn't come back sooner. But now I'm here to take you home." Fernando, who had overheard the conversation from his office, rushed toward the enclosure. "Excuse me, madam, are you family Chantal?" "Of course," Yolanda replied, pulling a crumpled, yellowed birth certificate from her handbag. "I'm her mother. I've come to take my daughter. I've heard she has an extraordinary gift with horses." Chantal understood immediately. Yolanda hadn't returned out of love or regret. She wanted to exploit her daughter's gift, to turn her into a circus act to make money. "I don't want to go with you," Chantal said, clutching Twister's mane. "Here, I'm happy." "Don't be ridiculous, child," Yolanda snapped, reaching for her arm. "You're a minor, and I'm your mother. You'll do as I say, whether you like it or not." Fernando looked at Chantal, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Mr. Fernando," she begged, her voice breaking. "Don't let her take me. I promise I'll take good care of Twister." But Fernando lowered his head sadly. "I'm sorry, Chantal. If she really is your mother, I have no legal right. The law is on her side." That evening, Yolanda took Chantal to a filthy little room in the city center. The place reeked of dampness and stale cigarette smoke. Cockroaches ran along the walls, and a sagging, unmade bed filled most of the space. It was even worse than sleeping on the street. "Now, listen to your mama," Yolanda said, sitting on the bed and lighting a cigarette. "We're going to travel all across Mexico. You'll tame horses at rodeos, fairs, and shows, and I'll sell tickets. We're going to be rich, my girl." Chantal curled up in a corner, her knees pulled to her chest. "And if I don't want to?" she asked in a faint voice. "Oh, you'll want to," Yolanda replied, blowing smoke through her nose. Because you're my daughter, and I decide what's best for you. Tomorrow morning, we leave this town. That night, Chantal wept in silence. Yolanda had gone out to take care of some business, but before leaving she had locked the door, making sure her daughter couldn't escape. From the hallway, Chantal could hear her mother's loud voice as she chatted with other people, laughing and talking about money. My daughter can tame any horse, even the fiercest ones, she boasted. It's a gift she inherited from me. We're going to make a fortune. Chantal closed her eyes and thought of Twister, a terrible certainty gnawing at her heart. Without her, back at the ranch, Fernando would surely have the horse put down, because Twister had become untamable again. Her only true friend was going to die because of her. For the first time in her life, someone truly needed her, and she couldn't abandon Twister the way she herself had been abandoned. She had to act, and quickly. Chantal waited until Yolanda fell asleep, then slipped out through the window of the filthy little room. It was 4 a.m. when she started running through the dark streets of Guadalajara, her heart pounding wildly. She had to reach the ranch before it was too late to save Twister. When the sun finally rose, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, she caught sight of the gates of the Aguilar Ranch. Her legs ached terribly, but she did not slow down for a single second. As she neared the corral, she saw a crowd gathered around the fence. Word of the horse's impending execution had spread to the neighborhood, and many had come to see the famous Untamable stallion one last time. Fernando stood there, his shirt wrinkled, a file of papers in his hands, waiting for the veterinarian assigned to perform euthanasia. Inside the corral, Twister was running like a mad creature, a condemned soul aware of his imminent end. His eyes gleamed with panic, and his hooves struck the ground with such force that clouds of dust rose into the air. What a tragedy, murmured an old woman. They say a little girl once managed to tame that wild horse. It's true, Fernando answered wearily, but she left with her mother. Without her, the horse is untamable again. Look, someone suddenly shouted. The little girl, she's back. All eyes turned toward Chantal, sprinting full speed toward the corral. Her curly hair flew in the wind, her dirty face streaked with tears. Far behind her came Yolanda, shouting and hurling insults at the top of her lungs. Chantal, get back here right now, you ungrateful brat. You have no right to disobey me. I'm your mother. But Chantal did not stop. She pushed her way through the crowd at the corral gate and ran inside. Twister, who had been thrashing like a storm, froze the instant he saw her. His despair melted into pure joy. Hello, my best friend, Chantal whispered, holding out her small, dirt-stained hands. I'm here. I'm sorry it took me so long. The giant horse stepped forward slowly and lowered his muzzle into her palms. An absolute silence fell over the crowd, every single person transfixed by the scene before them. I won't let anyone hurt you, she said, stroking his powerful neck. You and me, we're family now, and a real family never abandons its own. To the astonishment of everyone watching, Twister bent his front legs and knelt before the little girl. Chantal climbed onto his back, without saddle, without reins, carried only by trust and love. The horse rose slowly and began to walk inside the corral with her, as if they were performing a perfectly choreographed dance. Fernando immediately tore up all the sacrifice papers and threw the pieces into the air. This horse will not die, he declared loudly. And from this day forward, no one will go near him without Chantal's permission. Chantal, cried Yolanda, shoving people aside to make her way through. Get down at once. We have commitments in other cities. We don't have time to waste here. Chantal stopped Twister right in front of her biological mother and looked her straight in the eyes for the first time in 5 years. No, she said firmly, her voice carrying so that everyone heard. I will not go with you. You are my daughter, Yolanda screamed, her face red with fury. You must obey me. I'm your mother. No, you are not, Chantal replied, still perched on Twister's back. A real mother doesn't disappear for 5 years without a word. A real mother doesn't let her child starve or sleep alone on the streets. You only came back because you want to use me. That is not what it means to be a mother. The crowd murmured, impressed by the little girl's courage. Several nodded in agreement. I choose to stay here, Chantal continued, turning toward Fernando. If you agree, I want to live on the ranch and take care of Twister forever. Fernando smiled for the first time in weeks. Of course you can stay, brave little one. You and Twister, you belong here. This ranch is your home now, too. Yolanda, seeing that she had lost and that no one supported her, stormed off in fury, hurling threats that no one took seriously. Chantal slid down from Twister's back and hugged him tightly, breathing in the warmth of his coat, her heartbeat finally calming. Now we are a real family, she whispered in his ear, and nothing will ever separate us again.